I actually met Fleur some time ago. First time I met you was when you just became digital minister.
You know, it was a socialist government, and we had probably to prove that we had a new sort of new mindset towards entrepreneurship and business in general. And also, I felt that something was happening in France at the time with the tech ecosystem that probably was not sufficiently acknowledged abroad. And when I visited other countries, I was struck that many people were admiring France for its wine, for its luxury goods and brands, for its food, but not so much for its technology. And I really wanted to pay tribute to the new generation of entrepreneurs and showcase success stories abroad, because I thought that we had some merit in the technology area, and I think we did some good job actually in trying to promote a more entrepreneurial spirit in France, and maybe to promote the French tech ecosystem in a more suitable way abroad. So it was the beginning at the time.
Yeah, I see the 5 years that I've been observing, number of startups that have been much more active. And now is, other than Silicon Valley, I think you have the largest number of startups.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's true.
So tell me about, I mean, you have a very interesting background as well. So I'd like to kind of going back to you were a civil servant for a long time. So I'd like to get your perspective of joining in as a civil servant, and why did you decide to become pursuing that career goal? And then I want to hear about how did you migrate into venture capitalist?
Right, so I think I'm quite representative of a new way people are going to manage their careers in the coming years, because I did a sort of radical switch because I was, it's true, I was a civil servant working for the Court of Auditors, so the French equivalent of a GAO, a national audit body, independent body in charge of auditing and assessing the public accounts. And I did that for more than 10 years, almost 15 years, because I really had the feeling that I wanted to dedicate it. It was not a feeling, it was a conviction that I wanted to dedicate my professional life to serving the people, the state, and ultimately the French people. And by doing so, of course, I came into some political campaigns, and I did a couple of them, 3 of them actually, to be very precise, and sort of naturally I became involved I had a political commitment, and then the last campaign was the good one for me, and I became a member of government. And so becoming a member of government, of course, when you are a civil servant and when you are interested in serving the public, is the most wonderful thing that can happen to you, because you feel that you are in a position to really change things and have an impact on the way people live every day, or the way people produce or learn or access to culture. So it was really for me a great achievement. And I was very happy to work on the different subjects, different topics. So I had 3 portfolios: digital, innovation, and small businesses. Then very briefly, foreign trade and tourism, and then culture. And I really enjoyed, trying to renew the way the public action is conceived in these areas. I think we did some good jobs in those fields. But then when I was fired, in February 2016, I really felt that it was the right moment to change, and I had the sort of desire that to have a very different kind of experience. And I had been briefly in the private sector in the late 2000s, but I felt it was the right time. It was my last chance, actually, to have the courage to create something, because after that, it's too late, and you don't have maybe the drive or the courage. So, yeah, I had the chance to meet with a Korean, actually, economic actor, a big internet company, Korean internet company, and we decided together to create that venture capital fund that I established in France, and which aims at finding potential European or worldwide leaders in the technology area, maybe by using some bridges that we can create between France and Korea, because I think our two economies, our two countries have a lot in common and have a lot to learn from each other. So that's what I'm trying to do since last January. And I enjoy myself.
So in many ways, although you had a long career in one direction, you took risk.
Yeah.
You're an entrepreneur.
Exactly. So I'm not sure it will, pay back, but it's true that I really wanted to, and I resigned from public service because I was a public servant, and usually when you sign for the public service, you pass competitive examination, and then you are in a lifetime relationship to the state. But I decided to resign and abandon the benefits of being a civil servant, because I felt that towards my team, towards my investors, it was not the same signal, to have the possibility to go back to being a civil servant, or just, to add a 100% commitment in the adventure. So I took that risk, and I feel quite more comfortable with that risk rather than with a more an easier way to doing business.
So tell me about as a now venture capitalist, what are some of the things you're looking at, and what do you find that are very attractive in terms of French entrepreneurs and technology?
So actually, we have a 200 million fund, and we invest in startups from early stage to quite mature ages of or stages of development. We are pan-European, so we invest in France, but also in other European countries. And right at the moment, we are very interested, but like probably many others, in mobility. So everything that has to do with technologies that are required to develop autonomous vehicles, so computer vision, but also the platforms that will help citizens, people use multimodal transportation facilities. So we are looking at that field. We are looking at, of course, artificial intelligence, which doesn't mean anything really, but more about machine learning, natural language understanding and programming. So we are very interested in these areas. We're interested also in areas, verticals, where big data and a combination of big data and algorithmics is required to propose services such as marketing or advertisement servicing or talent search, that sort of things. So we've been quite active, and we've deployed quite quickly since the beginning of the year. The topics that were mentioned earlier, security, cybersecurity, blockchain, are obviously very attractive right now. A bit difficult because some of them are in a sort of gray area, and it's quite difficult to study them and to know exactly where the business models are located. But it's a very, I think, fascinating moment, and a lot is going on in Europe. What is attractive in Europe, and I think I see a lot of now Asian investors that are starting to get interested. You've been, of course, interested in the ecosystem for a long time, but some of them were more interested in the Silicon Valley in the United States and are starting now to look at Europe. And I think we have a great pool of talents. I mean, recently you've seen how a lot of big multinational companies fight to attract the best AI specialists that have been trained who have been trained in Europe, whether it be, of course, in France, we have great school academic background for algorithmics, but also in the Eastern countries. So we have very good people. We have a tradition of creative industry. So probably for a company like Samsung, which is at the same time very innovative, but also very related to contents and to creative industries, France is definitely a place where you have a mix of very strong technological skills, but also great creative skills. So, and probably a shift in the entrepreneurial mindset. I did a business school a long time ago. I won't say how long ago because it would say my age, but a long time ago. And at that time, I remember that not so many people wanted to create their own business. They wanted to join Arthur Andersen or PricewaterhouseCoopers. They wanted to join that kind of companies. They didn't, think they would be able to create their own business. So this has changed a lot, and I see now a new generation, the millennials or post-millennials, a new generation of entrepreneurs who have a great vision and who have a great ambition. And so this entrepreneurial drive is something I think very vibrant and which makes the European ecosystem, the French ecosystem in particular, very, very interesting for investors at the moment.
So when the graduates coming out of school, instead of going to government or large corporations, they join the startup is something very attractive?
Yeah, actually, so what many people say who are hiring now a new generation, what they say is that this new generation, X, Y, Z, they are looking for a meaning, for something meaningful, for a sense, of purpose. And probably while at my time, in my generation, we're probably more seeking prestige or comfort, sort of staying in a comfort zone. I think now this new generation wants to feel that they do something impactful. So impactful doesn't mean only NGOs or something that have to do with social impact, but they want to find some sense of purpose in what they do. So I think now, and I know that in Korea there's the same, a lot of young students, for example, dream to work for Samsung, but now also you see new actors that can become also very attractive, right, because they represent also a new way to do business and new governance. So it's quite it's very interesting.
I'm sure you learned quite a bit about Korea as well. It's very similar in many ways. The prestige jobs were either government or the large corporations like Samsung. But the problem of that is the economy is very concentrated. So the government trying to create what we call creative economy, and they have been pushing for the change. And I think that it's going to take time because the culture doesn't change overnight. But I do believe that it'll create different type of economy over there as well. I have a question for you. You have stated that there are challenges for French startups. You said thinking globally, language barriers, attracting global talent. So how does it change at this point in your view?
So I wish that we could deal with these sort of shortcomings, but it's very difficult because it's really the culture of business. But one of the main issues I think in Europe is the ability to scale a business. So we have great talents, we have great creativity, we have great entrepreneurial spirit now. So now our main issue, and when I say our, it's the problem of entrepreneurs, but it's also the problem of investors, and it's probably the problem of authorities, is how we can help a company to go from 10 million revenues to 50, and then 100, and then 1 billion. So the scale up is a very difficult thing, and especially at the moment, and I'm now as an investor, I'm confronted to that kind of situations, where a company that has been a startup for like 2, 3, 5 years needs to conquer new markets abroad, needs to, I don't know, deploy a retail network, needs to hire some people who have a global, a foreign background, because you need, if you want to expand and to become a global actor, you need to confront yourself with people who have different business cultures. That moment is the most difficult moment to manage and to achieve. And so probably, what we need in Europe is really to work on that very critical period. So to be sure that the companies find the funding to finance this going global phase, which requires a lot of money, to be sure that we are able to attract foreign talents, and also to export French talents is good, but to attract foreign talents and to be able to integrate them in managing teams is also very interesting. It's also very important. So I think if we want to have very nice success stories, if we are going to be able to build companies that can be tomorrow competitors of the new Facebooks or the new Googles or the new Tencents, then we need this to deal with these problems. Yeah.
Right. So this is a challenge, by the way, not just for France, but many other countries, including Korea and other countries. So tell me about, this is more of an investment question, more as a VC perspective. Bitcoin. 3 years ago, it was $200. Now it's $7,000. Maybe went down 25% last week. So I'm not sure how many of you are investing in Bitcoin. Can you raise a hand, please? Anybody that are in? So some of you, I'm sure you've seen the roller coaster. Actually, me too. So I found the company for about 4 years ago, just curiosity, so that I invested in some time watching it. I'm just curious about your thoughts about where is Bitcoin going? You have a perspective on it?
I think it's very difficult. It's very difficult to provide an answer. I think it's very interesting, and we are looking at it now from an investor point of view, not to invest in Bitcoins or not to participate to ICOs, but to look at companies that develop businesses around blockchain or cryptocurrency. I think when I look at low, some signals. Of course, you have the transactions and the Bitcoin price now raising, but you have also other signals like the fact that some countries, like in the Gulf area, are now saying that they will rely on blockchain to think about the decentralization process of the administration. The fact that the Bank of Japan is now recognizing Bitcoin as a currency. The fact that a lot of actors, including institutions, banking institutions or private banks, are now looking at Bitcoin because their clients, their customers, they want to be able to trade in Bitcoin. So this seems to take Bitcoin out of the gray area because the reputation, I know that in Japan and Korea, Bitcoin is really very, very big. And a lot of people, actually, you would ask the question in Korea, I think the majority of the people would have raised their hands. So in France, Bitcoin still has the reputation of something that is related to, money laundering and something very borderline. But now, the technology is very powerful. The blockchain technology is very powerful. And in the way bank and insurance probably is going to be disrupted in the coming years, I am sure, 100% sure, that blockchain will have a role to play. I mean, Samsung is also involved in pay systems like Samsung Pay. Definitely, blockchain is something that will be used at some point, to lower the transaction fees or the commissions. So I think it's really impossible for an investor not to look, I'm not saying to invest in, but not to look at this area, which is very difficult to understand because it's really a world with its code and to understand that the technology is not easy, but it's definitely an area where I think everybody is now trying to understand and to study.
Yeah, we've been looking at it. So we actually work with the IBM and others in looking at the standardization of it. Clearly, the blockchain itself has a algorithm that we think has a lot of merit. Could be a potentially next DocuSign. But there are two concerns that we have, and if some entrepreneurs can fix this problem, that could be a gold mine, right? One would be around the performance-wise, the ability to do transactions, scalability of transactions. That seems to be still one of the issues. And the other one is really economics. Still costs too much money to do it, but I think it's an algorithm. So if a smart French engineer can figure out how to solve those things by pivoting it, could be a very interesting outcome that could come out. So I'm curious about where it's going to evolve, but I do think it's a very interesting space to watch. But I'm not betting all of my money yet. What are some other exciting things that you see from in terms of when you work between Korea and France? When you look at two different countries, but yet both now top 10 largest economy. What are some of the opportunities you see that we can be able to collaborate and accelerate between what I call, how do you create a highway between two countries?
That's my dream, but it's not very easy to do so. Why is it my dream? It's because when you look at the economic history in the last years, you have the Korean economy has been able to create very big and powerful companies and actually worldwide champions. We have some, from the old economy times, we have some also economic giants. But now the ability and the figures that you showed about the 2007 and 2017 biggest market cap companies shows that very well. I mean, today in the data economy, in Europe, not only in France, but in Europe, we haven't been able to create very big giants. I mean, we have maybe Spotify or Skype, but very few examples of companies that have become, not unicorns, but 10 times or 100 times unicorns. And so, given the network effect and the winner-takes-all effects of this new data economy, I think that it's going to be very difficult to challenge multinational, American and Chinese multinationals. And I think that we can really have a competitive advantage if we unite forces with European actors and Southeast Asian or Korean, for example, actors. The thing is, it's very difficult because creating joint businesses, given the language difference, the cultural difference, is not an easy thing to do. But I am sure that if we want to compete and to create economic actors that are able to compete with big giants tomorrow in the data economy, in the knowledge economy, then it will require to create these strategic alliances or industrial alliances between European and Asian champions. So that's why I'm trying to work on. It's not easy, but I think actually a company like Samsung can have a responsibility, also in. Because I now travel a lot to Korea, and I see that a lot of companies, successful startups that have been created in Korea are not spin-off of Samsung, but a lot of people actually came from Samsung backgrounds, and so I'm sure that by consolidating or spinning off companies or ideas, Samsung can also, have a major part in creating also this ecosystem in the data economy. And what I would like is really to create this bridge between French startups or European startups and Korean or Southeast Asian or East Asian companies in order to create very big local, regional, multi-regional champions of tomorrow.
Let's talk about, given this kind of a trend to collaborate and creating an open market to enable bigger opportunities for both sides. Tell me your view on the Brexit, how it has an implication to Europe and to France.
Well, it's again a difficult question to answer because the way Brexit is going to be organized from an operational point of view is not known yet. But the thing is that compared to 1 year ago, what we feel now is that there's a strong possibility that there will not be an agreement, so that there will be a very hard Brexit, and that UK will be subject to OMC regulations, so nothing else actually. So this could be very, very problematic for fintech, especially, and London was definitely the European fintech scene. And if companies that are active in the financial area cannot passport their activities to the rest of Europe, it's going to be a big problem. And you start to see now to discuss with companies, whether it be banks, traditional banks, or startups that are fintech in the fintech area, who consider relocating their activities to mainland Europe, so either to Germany or to France. So you start to hear that, while a couple of months ago people were just in a more wait and see attitude. So it can be an opportunity for also for the other European ecosystems. But it's probably going to be a bit difficult for UK-based startups.
So, in terms of a globalization perspective, it feels like they're going backward, possibly. Is what possibility?
I think there's a quite high possibility that things will not be negotiated the way we thought they would be a couple of months ago. So uncertain times at least.
Right. So you talked about, I think the French government did a great job of creating many startup environment. But then you made a comment about the difficulties of a scale up, which if you think about what made Silicon Valley or Chinese companies successful is not only they have a very good startup environment, but they also have an ability to scale up to 10,000 people or whatever. So that creates a lot of jobs. And what are the challenges in France to create scale-up environment?
It's exactly the point. Two challenges: scale-up environment, and scale-up capabilities for the companies, and also probably from an investor point of view, if we want to finance the growth of these companies, exit perspectives, so liquidity of the market, which is a very big issue too, because we lack big corporations in France that are able to put billions on the table to buy a company, a successful company, or a stock market that really understands technological values, such as the Nasdaq, of course. So I was working when I was a minister on the possibility to create a European Nasdaq, but it requires a lot of cooperation between states, and it's always a difficult point. Right. But it's definitely something that we need, because the liquidity issue is a problem. To finance the growth of companies, we need to be sure as investors that we will, at some point we will be able to sell or to take our stake back. So that's a very big issue, and the scaling is definitely a big problem. So probably we could be inspired by the way usually when an American investor invests in a European company, R&D stays in Europe, and marketing and operations are flipped to the United States, because probably we lacked this ability to think more broadly how to address a bigger market. And maybe it's easier in the United States, because the United States is a single market. I mean, is a market with the same language and the same consumer habits, whereas Europe is not a single market. Right. So it's more difficult. It has a cost for a French company to address the German market. Whereas it does not necessarily have a big cost for a Californian startup to address the Texas market. So that's a big difficulty for our.
It's not surprising that Chinese startups and American startups have scale-up advantage, given the homogeneous and large size market, is what you're saying. Yeah. Right. So that does make sense. So Europe have to become one European market to represent the opportunities for everybody in the room, and then potentially even globalization will help. So you got to look at whole world as one, I guess. Yeah, and probably that's why also probably there's a big incentive to create alliances with Southeast Asian companies, right? Because it could, give access to a broader market. Broader market opportunities. With different cultures. So I think it's a interesting opportunity. And what I see is now that European startups, before, when they thought of globalizing their activities, they thought of going west, going to the States. Some of them now think about going to Asia before they go before they go west. So it's quite interesting to have this shift where now some companies, some startups, think of going east before going west first. It's quite an interesting move. Well, one suggestion maybe, and it's a joke, but it may not be. You just have to invite the Masayoshi Sohn of SoftBank and bring his $100 billion, then you got your liquid market out here. Yeah, but I wish there was a Sohn, a Sohn in Europe, So we start now to have bigger funds. I was happy to see that some successful entrepreneurs are now raising funds of 500 million and above, which is interesting because it's really good for growth segment. But of course, it has nothing to do with the figures of Sohn's investment capability. So yes, definitely we would need that kind of investment potential. Right, because if you have a successful exit, there will be more attraction.
Exactly.
It's the cycle. Isn't
Exactly.
It?
So it's
Yeah.
a virtuous cycle that we
Right.
need to create.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I'd like to just ask you one more. If you have an advice to entrepreneurs and venture capitalist community, what would be your word of wisdom here?
So I would not give an advice because I'm learning a new job, so I'm learning this new job in a very humble way, and I would not dare to give an advice. But the only thing is I think we should all have in mind, or whether it be entrepreneurs or investors in France, have in mind that if we want to win in the world to come, in the world of AI and cybersecurity, data economy, knowledge economy, we will need at some point, I think we will need some help from the governments, from the authorities, because they will need to regulate at some point everything that has to do with privacy, AI. So we're half of the way now, but the regulation needs will be, I think, very important. But I think now we have more ambition, we have more vision, we have a more entrepreneurial and a more global spirit. And I definitely think we should, cooperate to foster that kind of spirit and rely also on the new generations to lead this movement, of globalization, because I think they have the guts to do it. So it would just be a call for cooperation and co-petition. For all the people who represent the investor and entrepreneur ecosystem here. But I think we have very big assets here in France, very big talent, and so there's no way we won't win in tomorrow's world.
Well, let's give her a big hand. The new entrepreneur.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.